Welcome to Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast, your go-to source for insights and inspiration as you navigate your optometry journey.
Whether you're a student or a recent graduate in your first few years of practice, we're here to explore the topics that matter: career paths, job opportunities, board preparation, and more.
Each month, we'll bring you expert guests and practical tips to help you thrive in the world of optometry.
And just before we begin, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, OSI Group. If you're thinking about building an independent practice, it's easy to see it as a solo journey. So a singular vision shaped by your own hard work and determination. But here's the thing, true independence is often best achieved in a community.
OSI Group empowers independent optometrists through community, education, and the resources they need to thrive. As a member, you get all the advantages of a large network while staying firmly in control of your future. Visit www.opto.com for more. So, let's shape the future of optometry together on Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast.
Hello, how's it going? I haven't seen you for a whole month.
Happy Sunday, I know. No, we saw each other on
for my
the mentorship thing you did.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I already forgot that I did that. I feel like it happened so long ago.
Amrit is a young OD star.
I mean, Dr. Hecht is as well. So, I mean, for anyone who's not aware of Young OD Connect, I really feel that that's a great platform. It's US based, but Canadian students and optometrists are more than welcome to join. It's a platform that really just supports young optometrists and students and new grad ODs. So they offer mentoring sessions. So I was finally invited to do a mentoring session. I've never done one before. And anyone who joined could probably tell how nervous I was because I didn't prep anything in advance.
No, you did so well.
I hope so. Thank you. But yeah, it was a lot of just social media tips, how to take advantage of social media to grow your career, build more connections. And obviously Dr. Hecht knows a lot about that too. Why am I so professional? I'm calling Dr. Hecht like Alexa.
Yeah, please call me Alexa.
Please, why am I doing this?
I'm like,
am I so old now?
Girl.
Alexa knows all of this too. She's been on social media forever. So yeah, it was a really fun mentoring session. I would totally do that again.
Yeah, it was cool because I actually don't think I've attended, right when they started, I attended a few of the lectures, but it seems a little more formal than what the mentoring sessions are. And they're just so casual. And everyone was just kind of shouting out questions if they had. It was nice. It was just kind of just talking to like-minded people and getting some insights. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
And I'm actually heading back to Waterloo to talk about social media tomorrow.
Yes, I saw that. That's through Chaos, right?
Yeah, which is so weird and so full circle. They were messaging me where to go. They were park in this lot, enter through this store. It's the room. I was like, oh my God, I have so much PTSD from this room.
Yeah.
Of course I know how to get there.
No, I know how to park there. I cried there for 5 days.
Literally. I was like, thank you so much for the details. I know how to get there.
That's funny. I am going to say they probably did that to you because I've also been invited by Chaos to join one of their OD panel series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In March. And so I emailed them asking, hey, I'm not familiar with the Waterloo campus. So would you mind just emailing me directions?
Oh my gosh.
They just sent it to you probably after they read mine. Oh, we didn't realize.
They probably just send it to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very nice.
Fun fact, I know zero, information about the Waterloo campus, but I am a Wilfrid Laurier grad. So
that's so funny. I knew that
from you guys for 3 years and I never once stepped foot on the Waterloo campus. So I just had no idea where to go.
That's so fun. And then when we went back, it wasn't even on, it was on Waterloo campus, but it wasn't in the optometry building. So.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember.
We wanted to dive in and talk a little bit about, this episode is going to be really exciting. We have a really special guest and we're going to talk a lot about mental health and optometry. And so we wanted to touch upon what happened with the NBEO and the board examinations. So, Amrit, do you want to catch us all up on what happened for those of you who don't know?
Yeah. Listen, I'm not the expert in knowing what went on. I had to go listen to some podcasts as well and read some Facebook comments and Reddit posts to learn what was happening because I've been out of school for, I guess, a good chunk of years now. And I was actually listening to the podcast with Dr. Ryan Court, and he had Joshua Reese, who's a fourth year optometry student on there. He was sharing his experience about the NBEO, and he was part of that, debacle of scores coming out, I guess, for part two. And then all of a sudden, a new email came about just saying, hey, by the way, scores have changed. Go check it again. Right. And then a ton of students ended up realizing that they passed in the first email, failed in the second email, which is horrifying. I cannot even imagine the mental health struggle that those students are going through and went through when they read that second email, because we all know that board examinations are probably the number one stressor in optometry school, because that's all you are working towards in optometry school, is to just pass your board so that you could then eventually get your license and practice. And what I wasn't aware of was the part three debacle that was going on. And I learned from that podcast. Yeah, Alexa has no
I don't know.
idea, I
No, I
guess.
haven't heard this.
I had no idea. I haven't heard this until Josh shared it, that just recently, I think last year, part three procedures have now changed.
Yeah,
Right?
I knew that.
Yeah. So they're not doing the whole clinical, check this off the list when you do these tests. It's more patient discussion, right? With the patient in the room. And some of the students who completed the third examination were emailed by the NBEO saying that their scores were being withheld because they wanted to speak to those students over the phone or in a meeting regarding something. And okay, I'm very loud with my opinions, and I'm a very aggressive opinion person, okay? If I ever received an email from the board examination saying, "We're holding your scores back because we need to talk to you, call this phone number," I would absolutely freak the crap out and think like, "Am I being arrested?
Yeah.
What happened?"
Yeah, I would think like I did something illegal.
Why would you ever email students something like this? First of all, very unprofessional. Is this even legal? Obviously as an adult now, as a practicing doctor and friends who are lawyers, I really would have been like, is there a legal obligation that I have to give you a private call and figure out, and like, you're holding back my scores? Like, what is going on? And apparently they were under the assumption that specific students may have shared or leaked information regarding the new part three examination procedures. And so they were interrogating these students. I might be wrong in my interpretation, but it sounds like they were interrogating these students, asking, did you share any information on social media? Did you share any information, on all these different media platforms? Were students given information by you on how to pass? That's insane.
It's so crazy too, because from my experience with NBO part three, it used to be like all laid out. Like you knew exactly what you were going in to do.
Very structured. And it was obvious what was there.
So like you almost couldn't do that. And so the fact that they're saying, like, sure, they were like, okay, don't share, what diagnosis you got or like what question you were asked. But like there were like 5 or 10, you kind of knew. But that's insane.
Yeah. And apparently, according to, what Josh shared on that podcast was, yeah, you had to call the number, you had to talk to them. They asked you these questions. And then eventually they released scores, I guess, when they were happy with the conversation. Like that to me is shocking. And to put that on any student, like with how much crap we're already going through, with the mental health issues we already have. I mean, how can you give students that much anxiety regarding their board scores?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So we just kind of primed the conversation with what students are going through with board examinations right now and how that could be heavily impacting their mental health while they're in school. And we've all gone through our own stressors while in school, and we can't really compare, because every generation of doctors and students are in different scenarios and situations in life. But so we're excited because today we have Dr. Hansel Huang with us to share his personal experiences with mental health and optometry. And we hope that everyone listening, learns some really good tidbits from him and is motivated to get some one-on-one coaching or just to talk more openly about their own stressors in life so that, we can help you navigate getting through it. So, Dr. Huang, can you formally introduce yourself to our listeners and share what motivated you to become an optometrist and eventually own a practice and get into, this mental health space?
Okay, awesome. So I'm Hansel, Dr. Wong, and I practice in Windsor. I grew up here for a little bit, and then later on in my childhood, I guess teenage years, more in Sudbury, Ontario, went to school and did optometry school in Florida in Nova Southeastern, and then came back to Windsor to practice. So my wife, who's a teacher, can work in Windsor. My goal was to work in the States for a little bit, just to kind of pay back some of the loans and then settle down in Canada someplace, and then end up just staying right in Windsor. So that was that part of the journey. And it's funny when you ask me what motivated you to become an optometrist, this is the trickiest one because we kind of led in this earlier, just, in just talking. My own optometrist growing up as a family optometrist when I was a child, he was awesome. Dr. Gordon Bench. He's in Sudbury. I think since retired, he was just an awesome human being. He was actually at my wedding, like a just really good mentor for me. I don't know if he was a good optometrist. And Dr. Bench, please forgive me, because as a patient, you don't know, right? Like the experience is the experience. And, I'll never, like most of our patients will never high five us and say, that was the greatest refraction I've ever got. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And yet as a human being, as somebody, his demeanor, I think was what was really pretty important to me. He was just calm. I don't know why that was important to me growing up. And yet it was, I think, a lot of his personal demeanor. He was just a calm human being. And that was just really, again, it's weird. Like it was just an interesting, I think if any quality jumps out, it'd be that and just a nice human being. Now, when you ask why want to become an optometrist, that was part of it. I remember really early in childhood, I said to my mom, one day I want to be an optometrist. And she thought it was a great idea. My dad was on board, doctor, being Asian, right? Those are one of the career paths is a doctor. You got to be a doctor. You have to. It's one of those titles. And I think later in early high school, I remember saying to my mom one day, I think I want to be a writer. And I love creativity. My whole family, my dad, my sister, myself. And my mom looked at me and said, what a great idea. You're such a great storyteller. You write great stories. You should be an optometrist. And it was one of those things that struck me like, I guess it's just one of those things you're supposed to do. So it wasn't that I didn't want to, but at that point in your life, it was like, is this really what I want? Or is this one of those you're supposed to? And yet you go down the path of, I don't want to say it's easier or not, but I went down the path of, well, I'll work hard. I'll be an eye doctor and I'll do what I'm supposed to do. And then you go through all of this. You go through school, you do what, you work hard. Like, I think we're all hard workers and you make it. And at the end of it, it was like, okay, I'm an eye doctor. Now what? And so I know it doesn't sound inspiring yet. I promise you it'll get to the point where it makes more sense. But to answer your question, that was really how I started. It was a conflict of, is this really what I want? And it was. I know part of me did, but it wasn't like all in just because it was such a weird sentence from my mom. You should be an eye doctor.
I think that what you just said, a lot of people will relate to, because I think when we're trying to figure out what we want to be, you have to figure that out at such a young age and such a time in your life when you really haven't had that much life experience.
It is like, think about it too, right? Like you hit the nail on the head. Like I fall into that trap a little bit when I do vision therapy. So to continue the story, when I first graduated, I did 2 weeks in the States at one of the bigger commercial corporate situations. And I think it literally was 1 weekend, 5 days in. And I said, this isn't for me. I actually broke down and I thought, there's no way I'm cut out for this. I did not go to school to do this. They expected at one point 8 patients every hour. And it was, yeah, it was a lot. And I just said, this isn't me. And so I ended up kind of giving notice one weekend. And that's when I broke down because I thought, this is your career. And you're quitting on your first job in your career 5 days in. Like, you can't do, like, dude, come on. So it was one of those things that it was a bit, it shook me a little bit. I'm stepping away from a job that I'm supposed to suck it up and do it. You're supposed to be an eye doctor. And that was the first little whatever. Then I worked in still a corporate setting for a few more months and then ended up staying on Canadian side and starting a little bit earlier here. Private practice. I was an associate and I learned a lot. She gave me an opportunity that, again, I'm really appreciative of. I got to see a lot of patients. And again, one of the important parts was I got to pay off student loans a little bit, at least make some money. Didn't pay it all off in that first little bit, but at least I got to make some stable income. She gave me a good opportunity. It was really nice. And then later on, it was, again, what do I want to do with that? And that's where I slowly discovered vision therapy. And that was now a little bit easier for me to accept that, okay, this is optometry, a part of it. You're still supposed to, I still had that in me, be primary care, sell glasses, all that good stuff. And yet, at least vision therapy brought me closer to my heart, what my passion point of being an optometrist or eye doctor, helping others the way I really wanted to.
I find that your story really resonates with me because, no, I agree with you. Like, not every story has to be inspiring, right? Because life doesn't always have to be inspiring. I find that it's very helpful when your stories are relatable. And mine was very similar. When people have asked me, why did you become an optometrist? I said, I knew my strength was science and health. And I just said, well, I'll pick one. I'll pick something. I'll pick a dentist, an optometrist, whatever, a chiropractor. I'll learn how to do it and I'll make money and I'll have a stable income. And then I'll work that job so that I can enjoy other things in life.
Right.
Right. So like I selfishly just said, yeah, I know it's a good paying job. I know I am capable and smart enough to handle that sort of an education and profession. I had the confidence in myself to get through it. And then when I make enough money, if I hate that job, after work, I'll clock out and I'll do other fun stuff.
100%.
Like that was my mentality going in.
That was my mom's mentality for me going in. You should be an optometrist because you're a good writer.
Yeah. And yeah, you can write after work. That my parents would say the exact same thing. Maybe it is a cultural thing.
Well, and I started reading, like, I'll say this early, like growing up in Sudbury, I'll be clear, like I was a very visible minority. So it was hard to kind of connect and find, where I belonged and all this meaning. And so to have that, it was like, okay, now in my journey, I'm much older now. So then it was just in the last couple of years, maybe even last year, if I'm being honest, where I wanted to really look at what does it mean being Chinese in a Western society? Where is the right way? Is it the Chinese way that I'm supposed to be, or is it the Canadian way that I'm supposed to be? And then how do they work? Because oftentimes they can be almost in a conflict. So it's balancing it all out and then realizing, okay, how much energy do I really have at the end of the evening with 2 kids and a family and my own interest to write? And then what kind of writing and for decades, you just embrace what society tells you is just go home, clock out, be happy with what you can buy, be happy with the house and the cars and the vacations. And then, not to be bleak, at the end of it, you retire and then that's it. You're good.
Yeah. And then that's it. No, very, very relatable.
Yeah. I think there's so much to be said about what you just said.
Yeah. We've only gone through one question. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. But I like where this is going.
Okay. Yeah. Please go ahead.
No, I'm just so curious about your one-on-one coaching. I mean, it seems like you own your practice. You have a separate kind of vision therapy practice as well. So almost 2 practices. Then you also have this side one-on-one mental health coaching. Can you talk about that?
So yeah, this is the continuum now. So then why did I get into coaching I'll take the theme of it. The guilt was I don't want to say complete guilt. Like I said, part of me wanted to be an optometrist and part of me was, you're supposed to. And I kind of put that in a guilt response, right? The supposed to, you ought to, you should do these things. It's expected. And if you don't, you might feel a little guilty. You're letting down somebody, in this case, parents or whatever, even the thoughts in your head. So when I found vision therapy, it was now moved towards fear, right? Fear of, can I be a good eye doctor? Am I the best that I can be? Can I be the best for my patients and my team? And it was so big that when I started doing vision therapy, let's be clear, even as much as a group, as a profession, we say you should charge what you're worth. Internally, you can get the finger wag at you're charging too much, or how dare you do this? It's like a dichotomy we have within ourselves. We see it on our forums, right? In Ontario, we see it in our forums where it's like we'll knock another profession because they're not getting paid enough, and then we'll knock each other because, and it's like, guys, we're in the same boat. We're all in the same profession doing the best we can. And yet it doesn't matter what we're charging, as long, I hope, as long as we're charging what we think we're worth. And that's the thinking part. That's hard. So for me, it was hard. How do I make a business out of this and still charge what I want to charge? And yet, forget about worth. Let's just charge what I hear others are doing because it seems reasonable. Then the self-reflection of fear was, well, I'm not good enough for them to invest in. Then how are they going to invest in the clinic? So it was my education. I would take like 100 hours of CE every year just to feel like I was good enough to be charging for vision therapy. So if I wasn't worth it, I'm going to be very clear, very transparent. The program would be. It'd be based on all the classes, all the hours, all the extra hours of vision therapy so that this program is going to be robust. Flying to Switzerland, flying all over the States, flying to Hawaii, flying to wherever just to get the courses to come in. And then when you start taking so many courses, it's not that you learn them all. It's just that you start to look for others that'll add, right? The first couple of courses you take, I remember driving home on a Sunday thinking, oh, Monday is going to be huge. It's going to revamp how I practice. And eventually when you take so many courses, you don't get that hit as much, right? It's not going to revamp. It's just going to kind of adjust or tweak it here and there. And it's good. Those are all good things. And then you start to look for other courses that can really revamp. And I remember it was right around COVID, right after COVID, when I said, well, I wanted to learn more about communication. Coming out of COVID, communicating with yourself, with your family, with your patients, and your team. I thought that was so huge because of the amount of fear that was around the news, around society with COVID. And when I took this course, I think it was the second or third day in, I remember turning off the cameras all online because COVID, again, you're doing a lot of distance stuff, and shutting the camera. I thought, oh crap, this is communication with self. I am not ready for this. And it was such a game changer for me. I remember just bawling. Coming in on Monday morning is when my lead therapist would always call I had like 2 different locations, and she'd call and say, okay, what are we learning this week? Because she'd get excited. Whatever I learned, I would teach them. I said, okay, well, last night we ended with this, and it was all about part of me wants to do this, part of me wants to do that. And I started bawling on the phone. It was 9:00, and it was 9:10, my first patient. And she's like, what is going on? What? I don't know. They broke me. And for 2 weeks, I was like in my own crap, my own baggage of just tears of, I created my world. I used to blame it, like, why did they get their world? How, why can't I? The woe is me thing. And it must be them, not me. Life is unfair. And when I realized it was me, it was the words I was using, it was my narrative, it was how I put things out there in the world, that I created my world. And for 2 weeks, I remember just being in a disorganized disarray in my shit. Then I was taking, it was a weekend in, so again, a lot of courses. I took, it was the second weekend in Bob Sanet's course. And again, luckily, me and him, we had a good connection. We started doing a lot of monthly calls and other doctors on and so on. And in one of those things, it was, okay, you can do your own work. You help patients. There's a technique that Stefan Collier had taught me, and it was called a LBM, a limbic balance method, where you help with emotions, get rid of it and so on in the background. So one of my colleagues said, but you do that, don't you? I'm like, yes, I do it all the time with my patients. Why don't you do it on yourself? Because it won't work on me. It only works on, you're in your stuff. So when I got rid of all this emotion, this baggage, this whatever, it helped. And you do more and you do more and you start to work on yourself a lot more. And all of a sudden, it was peaceful. What the beautiful part was, why then I got into coaching was learning all this stuff and I could see my world change. And all of a sudden, I started having the world that I wanted, the practice that I wanted, the way I showed up. It was, why don't I want this for my friends, my colleagues, optometry? I really believe this is one of the best professions, not just because this is what I do. The people I meet are amazing. When I listened to a couple of your podcasts just a few days ago, you guys were saying like this is a community that wants to share. This is a community that wants to help, and I believe it. I think oftentimes if we get out of our own way and become the true authentic version, this profession can be huge. Like it can be such a amazing community, not just for our profession, but for the world itself. Like I know that sounds big, and yet that's just what I think the people in this field does. So why coaching? When I started working on myself, not only like again, one of the things you guys had asked earlier was about fear. Stress and fear can be good motivators. How do you use that? It's not always just a negative. Yeah, it helped me fear, at least the stress of not being good enough, the fear of not being good enough to learn so much that I had one of the best programs, I believe, around, like a world-class program. When I started working on myself and then bringing it to coaching, it was, well, I still got a world-class program and I also have a more authentic version of me. So then when I started doing the coaching, I thought, well, the first question asked is, who's your ideal client? And I wrote it down and it was optometrists. And I thought, why would they want to coach with me? Why would optometrists who've got it, who are successful, who can at least go home and they can have a good family and they have the lives they want and so on. Why would they want to coach with me? And some of the most successful optometrists I know were calling me and saying, I want what you have. And I remember that was one of my clients' first things was, you spent for 3 weeks in San Diego with your family. I want what you have. Now, I'll be clear, his practice is about 10 times bigger, 9 times bigger than mine. And in my head, I'm like, I think I know what he means, but I'll check in with his wording. I'm like, why would you want a practice that's 1/9 or 1/8 of yours? And he's like, no, I want the freedom to be able to do what you do, to just disconnect from your practice and say, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. Basically live the life in harmony that he wants. And then all of a sudden, other doctors started hearing about it and calling me and say, I want that too. I'm successful in the practice-ish. I've had other clients say, I don't even know how to practice. Not that they're not making money, but how do I show up in a way, because even though the patients leave and they're happy, how do I make sure that I feel like I'm worth it? Because it's like, did I do enough for the patient? Or do they leave and wonder if I did enough? It was that internal dialogue again, that chatter in your head that we all kind of brings every once in a while.
Yeah, it's basically that imposter syndrome, right? Like we always, every optometrist, and I feel like even seasoned ODs, like you're just saying now, like you've been practicing for more years than we have, and a lot of our listeners are students. They haven't even practiced in the real world yet, and we all have that level of imposter syndrome. And yeah, especially with practice owners, I'm sure maybe more than associates. With practice owners, there's a lot of responsibility, and not just for patients, but for your team and your staff members and everyone that you hire. And you take all of that stress home with you. Like any patient that I've seen for the day, I know that I come home and I think about, was that patient upset with me? Did I offer the right treatment plan for that patient? They didn't respond to my email and it's been 2 days and they never booked that first vision therapy session that I recommended. So did I explain it wrong? Do they think that I don't know what I'm doing? Like all these things. And then you see my husband sitting on his couch after work. He can just clock right out, put on a TV show, eat his chips and just go like, why are you talking about work? Most of us probably just can't let it go.
I have a theory on that. So doctors, okay, can we agree doctors in school are probably very successful in school? They knew how to school. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh,
right.
Of course.
How do you assess how good you are in school?
Yeah, just by standardized testing, right? Board exam.
Testing. So when you get the grades back, usually when you become a doctor, what grades do you see on the top of the page? Probably A plus 90 something. Yeah. Okay. You do this for how many years? From grade 1 all the way to, well, right, grade 12, oh 08. Like then you got year 4, then you got optometry or medical, whatever. You got all these years. That's a solid 2 decades of our lives, 20 years of reinforcement of external, extrinsic awards, gold stars. We become so good at collecting gold stars, right? When you graduate, and let's say you're even one of the top of the class, thank goodness, or maybe a disadvantage, right? You got an even better gold star than everybody else. You got valedictorian, you got whatever awards. Then when you graduate, you see your first patient. How do you get a gold star?
You don't, or you just get a Google review.
I was just about to
Or not
say, yeah, Google review.
but not even. No, you get literally nothing.
Right. So what you have trained yourself, conditioned yourself to know you're good is unfortunately taken away. And I don't even think that's healthy to begin with. Like in my vision therapy program, we just had a talk with a husband and wife, mother, father team on Friday, and it was about the gold star. Their child has an eye turn that turns it. And I said, the hardest part is I want to be careful is even when their son can point his eyes straight, I want to avoid saying that's good because that's the end point. I want the effort in what it takes to work hard every week so that eventually not only is it straight eyes, it's also whatever he wants to achieve in life. It's not the ending, it's the effort. Now, for us though, as optometrists, when you graduate, you're hoping, like you just said, do my patients like me? Why didn't they respond? You're looking for that A plus. And yet, unless we ask our patients, can you tell me if I got an A plus? They're not going to tell you because that's a weird thing to say to a doctor. And then you leave a little bit unfulfilled and a little bit shaken because you're used to every week, every month, every whatever, you get a grade and they tell you you did well.
I feel like the resolution for this problem should be we should have those little Valentine's Day boxes where it says, do you like me? Check yes, check no. And then just hand those out to the patients after every exam.
Yeah. I mean, and that is the hardest part is that how do we, and again, this goes back to why do I want to coach? I was the same. I wanted the validation. I needed it. Or else if I don't feel authentic. And yet, even if I got it, is that really authentic? I'm getting the validation from somebody else. So now when I coach, the whole goal is what do you really want? Like, how do you know you've got it? Because at the end of the day, like we can have a big bank statement every month. It looks nice, but it's still just when is it enough before we feel fulfilled or we've arrived? It helps, right? When you buy stuff, shove it in that retail therapy, right? It feels good. And again, I'm not knocking it. I think having things is so important because we work hard. And yet it's hard to find that long-standing fulfillment over and over again when you're just buying things because you're just shoving it into a hole that's there.
Do you dream of forging your own path in optometry? OSI Group empowers optometrists to build thriving, independent practices. Your vision, your way.
Business coaching and support, practice management software, digital solutions, and advantageous volume discounts. OSI Group is 100% member owned and proudly Canadian.
Standing out doesn't mean standing alone. Join a dynamic community fueling your success at every stage of your journey. Take the first step today at www.opto.com. That's OPTO.com.
So then, Hansel, what would you recommend for optometry students and new grads in order to navigate that imposter syndrome when they start practicing? Like, what are your tips that you've learned over time? Because like you just said, we don't get that instant gratification and instant A plus from a patient. So what strategies can we use so that we make sure we're not worrying about that constantly and worrying about, are we good enough when we do start practicing?
So this is levels now. This isn't just a Monday morning do it type of thing. This is level. So the first one I would say is, and these are all simple, but they're not obviously they're deeper than just this. The first one is really know thyself. And in order to know what you want, you probably should start with who you are, right? Because again, let's go back to the younger version of me. What do I want to do? Well, I don't know. And so if I just think, well, I'm supposed to do this, I don't know if I really like it or not. I just know I'm supposed to. It could be what I want to do, But until I know who I really am, it's hard, right? You're guessing. Then you need the validation from somebody else again. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Did I do it right? So when I coach this, I say to my clients, like, when you and your husband were first started dating, how did you know he was the one? Right? You sit down, you have dinners, you spend time with, you ask questions, you figure each other out. In order to make a new friend, you don't just hope they're nice to you. You learn about each other, you spend time. So in order to know yourself, what do you have to do? You spend time with yourself. You have conversations with yourself. You really go inward and say, okay, what do I like to do? One of the questions I ask my clients is, where do you get energy from? And where do you get depleted? Because sometimes when you go to work, let's be clear, most of us, I shouldn't say that. Most of my clients I coach with, I'm gonna make sure this is true. All but one so far that I can think of, very introverted. Now, that's not good nor bad, but I remember saying that to my sister when I first graduated. Like, you realize, Hansel, you picked a job where you're talking to people. So I know, but I'm good at this. And what introversion to me isn't that you don't like people. It's just that you spend energy talking to people. So I didn't really understand that though. So at the end of the day, I'd go home cranky. Like I'm drained, I'm depleted. I just spent all day talking like, short bursts of conversations with many different people. So until I understood what that meant to be introverted, it was okay, where do I get energy from? So for me, I like reading. I like going on walks. I like me time. And then when I had my two girls, I remember thinking, yeah, when I play with my girls, I get tons of energy from that. So I remember sitting them down and saying, wait, as they got a bit older, hey, when I'm feeling a bit depleted in energy, can we hang out? When I hang out with you, I get energy. And they looked at me really weird, like, yeah, we hang out all the time. Like, no, no. Sometimes I want to purposely get energy. And I want to do this so that number one, you're helping me. But number two, I want to make sure that intention is set. So again, knowing myself first was important to number one, how do I get energy? How do I lose energy or spend energy? And then also, what do I want to do? And the more I learned that, because again, if you don't know what you're doing, you could be good at it, but it could be very draining. One of the people in my life that is so important, he kind of gave this saying to me that when you are doing things that you aren't meant to be doing, life can become hard. When you aren't doing the things you're meant to be doing, life can become unbearable. Now, why is that important? You could be good at your job, but if you're not doing what you're meant to be doing in life, it becomes just a grind, doesn't it? Those are the ones who grow old fast. And all of a sudden, it's like, I'm just doing it because I have to. So, number one, know yourself, spend time with yourself, and really just connect with yourself. Now, the second part of it is once you start learning yourself and learning how you get energy, that's where I tell my clients, create your daily foundation. What are your daily things that you do that starts to create the energy in the person who you want to be? I mean, it's much deeper than this, but just really, I guess, simplistically, the daily foundation that I do, even this morning is, it's Sunday. I want to sleep in a little bit more. And again, I'm not perfect at this. So there's days where I might be like, you might skip a couple of things here and there. But even this morning, got up early, got on the treadmill, just wanted to get some cardio in. Well, the second part was then after cardio, I'll enjoy a cup of coffee and I'll write out my daily gratitude. What do I appreciate? What am I grateful for in life? And then it was any release work that I want to focus on. What am I feeling this morning? Do I need to get rid of that? What's my intention for the rest of the day? And then I haven't read yet because typically I like to at least carve out some time to read just to kind of have, whether it's leisure or whether it's for information. And then later on for bedtime, I'm going to do some more release work or at least forgiveness and then go to bed. There's a little bit more than that, but really what I'm trying to do every day is to say, what are my minimum things I'm doing on a daily basis to make sure I'm adding to myself again? What am I growing? What am I instilling? Really what I'm trying to focus on, if I believe in the wholeness of us, is the four bodies of self. So the spirituality, there's the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical. So the physical for me today was the treadmill. I'm going to do some cardio. The mental side is the reading. I'm going to read later on, probably this before bedtime. The emotional was the release work, the meditation, the forgiveness. And also the walk outside when I walk my dog later on today. To me, that can be spiritual. I'm going to probably connect with nature. look around and say, okay, what part of outside am I really appreciative to be part of this world? We went to church today, so that's easy to say it's spiritual. But I look at the four bodies, say, how do I cultivate the authentic me so that I'm growing those parts of me? And then when I go to work, I'm looking at what lit me up today, what pushed back, what made me feel yucky or got a rise out of me, what was a hook? Usually it's from patients. Like I love my patients. And you get the ones where every once in a while they show up on your schedule and you're like, that person's coming in today, right? You get that one. Those are the best ones. And I'll tell you why. Whenever you get a hook, reflect on why they hooked you. Reflect on why you got such a feeling. And then ask yourself, how is that me? What is my responsibility of this so that I can work on myself so that it becomes less of a hook? Not to compromise, not to anything else, but usually it's reflection, right? So like there was something on a forum the other day is how many times you see a patient back for a recheck in a prescription before you charge them. And then there was a lot of back and forth. You dismiss them, you charge them from day one, and so on. And there was a lot of like, you could feel, you could sense a lot of emotion in the feedback and the responses. And I thought those are the perfect patients to reflect on. What does it mean about you if you get that rise? Because to me, I'm going to reflect and then figure out why did that kind of get me angry or something, and then work on it. The more I do that, the more I get rid of those hooks, and the more I show up every day being authentic and it just becomes easy all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, it's just a day at work, and then you get to be really you without having to hide or put on a mask or persona or things like that. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. No, definitely. I feel like everything that you just mentioned are things that I have heard in the past too. Like anytime we have conversations with anyone regarding mental health, every single thing that you recommended that we should work on is for me, I already know those things, but I love that you're finally, you're someone who is actually practicing that every day and coaching people and reminding people to do those things every day because you just reminded me. Even though I already know all this information, I don't practice that every day. And while you were talking, I was like, why don't I do this every day?
So here's what I'll say. The why part is strategies.
Yeah.
It's all about knowing motivation of us. So for example, there's a couple of things. One is the fear, like what motivates you to be X, to be an optometrist, to be wife, to be the husband, to be. What I say to my clients again is how you show up in one area is how you show up in every areas. So if I want to be the best optometrist for my patients, then I better be the best husband. I better be the best father. I have to be the best fill in the blanks, brother, son. Because it's not that you just wake up one day and say, I'll be great at this and let everything else fall off. It's you practice greatness. Now, if it's not greatness, fill in the blanks of consistent, fill in the blanks of authentic or the best version or whatever. Then it's like you just start showing up in everything. So I have clients who will say like, so for example, I have one, even though I said I coach optometrists, there's every once in a while I'll take on a client who isn't. I had to reflect just last year. Everything checked off except she was a dentist. I'm like, yeah, it just doesn't work. I'm just not going to coach a dentist. I'm going to coach optometrist. And I slept on it. And a few days later, I thought, you know what? Everything else checks out. How difficult would it be? Wasn't it difficult? It was just, I can just slide sideways. Now, what's interesting now is even though she was at a point when we first started not wanting to practice anymore, or at least very much whatever, all of a sudden she bought her own practice and now she's like growing it and she's thriving and she has this new burst of passion for what she does. And it's so exciting to see. And again, it's not that you just show up one day and be a good dentist. It's where else in your life do you need to show up in your most highest level, because that's how you create momentum. In order to do that, though, it's also to understand more of yourself again is what motivates you to show up. For me at the beginning, like I said, it was fear of not being good enough. So every day it was work hard, put on the mask, don't show cracks, don't show imperfection because it's fear, fear, fear. Now, if it's fear motivated, let's be clear, fear does work. In December, when we do our New Year's resolution, it's usually what? I'm too fat. So January 1st, everybody signs up for gym, right? If you sign up for gym membership and you eat well, what eventually will happen? You're going to lose the weight. You're going to look good. And eventually the fear of what goes away? The fear of I'm too fat goes away. And then the motivation goes away. When the motivation goes away, what happens? We skip a couple days, we cheat on a little bit of snacks. And then eventually over time, we start putting on the weight again. So you hit that up and down, that seesaw diet, if you will. Think about our practice. For meditation, for all the stuff that we want for ourselves, when we hit that level of stress that I'm too X, not authentic, not good enough, or I feel really yucky, you start to meditate more. You start to pay attention to yourself. And then what happens? You feel good. Life becomes easier. And the fear of I'm not good enough kind of slips away, or I feel yucky goes away. And then you get rid of the habits again, because they weren't quite habits yet. They were just motivated by fear. When I coach this, it's okay to have some fear at the beginning, but why do you want to do it? Why do you want to work out? Why do you want to be that? And most of my clients will say, I want harmony in life. Why do you want harmony? Is it because you're afraid you don't have it? Or is it because, and a lot of them will say, no, I just want to spend time with my kids and really be with my kids. I want to really hang out with them. So when I'm playing with my children, I'm focused, I'm present, and I'm mom, I'm dad, I'm whatever. When you have that as your motivation of love, it's easier to pull that all the way through. And then you just start living that life by creating the strategies.
I feel like what you're talking about, there's just so many good points. I feel like I'm in a one-on-one coaching myself.
It's honestly like it was. And again, back to the original, why did you start coaching? Because I started seeing in my life, like if I could be the biggest person with fear, like the biggest fear motivator, and if all of a sudden I can flip it and switch it, like I said, 2 weeks of crying every day, of blaming myself. And it was like in between patients, holy crap, this is your life you created. At the end of that 2 weeks, when it hit me was, well, if you can create such a negative aspect of your life, a negative life, you can also create what you want. And once that switched for me, once that recognition of getting out of my own way, it was like, holy crap, now I can do whatever I want. And this is why it excites me that it's not that life is easy, but life is easy. Does that make sense? Like whatever obstacles go your way, when you're living what you're meant to be living, it's easy because this is just life now. This is just part of it.
I was just going to say, what really resonated with me was how you mentioned, like, almost what do you have to do for yourself to show up for your patients? And I find on the days when I, wake up a little bit earlier, get in some movement and spend time with myself before I go and meet 12 new people or see 12 old faces that I've already met, I show up better for my patients. And I come home maybe a little bit less exhausted. And on the days I don't do that, I do definitely notice like a shift. And so I have to remind myself, this is why I'm waking up early so that I can show up as the best version of myself for my patients.
What I love is that, and I'm going to take it a little bit more for you so you kind of see why. When you show up early, like when you wake up early, even though it's easier to stay in bed, right? It's easy to stay in the comfort of a little bit warmth blanket, especially in Canada when it's colder in the winter. When you wake up early to move, what does that mean to you? Like, what does that say to you about yourself, Alexa? Like, what are you saying to yourself if you get up early to do a workout that it would be easier to stay in bed?
I guess it's just saying like I'm putting myself first and my health first.
So you're showing up for yourself.
I'm showing up. Yeah.
Now, when you show up for yourself, remember how you show up in one area is how you show up in every. Your day is easier because you're literally showing up for yourself in everything you're doing that day, including getting up out of bed to move, even though it'd be easier not to move. Flip it. When you don't wake up early, when you don't show up for yourself, what are you saying to yourself? It's okay not to always be high level, whatever, fill in the blanks. So then when you show up the rest of the day with that energy, yeah, some exams will be over, some patients, how you show up will be high level, some other levels will be not so high. It's random because you created that energy of, doesn't matter how I show up, I just got to be there. And that's when you're depleted a bit because it was like, no, that's not how I wanted to show up in my practice. And then you go home. Again, whether you have kids or a partner or whatever, then it's like, how do I show up there now? Is it going to be the high level that I want? Or is it random because I created a random? I created a permission to be random.
Yeah. I love that. We had a question about stress not always being negative and how can, stress push you to grow. But I honestly feel, Hansel, that that whole conversation was really that, right? Like, how can you take your fears and your stresses and then turn it into something positive to push you to become better for yourself and then also in your professional life? But as a practice owner now, what strategies or tools do you have to support your team's well-being, not only your own? And, how does your work environment and your practice then reflect your personal values on mental health? And not only for your staff members, but also for any associate doctors that work with you.
So what I've learned is the first is how I used to help them. As soon as I discovered this, I want to help everybody, right? You force your healing onto everybody else because why not? Who doesn't want to feel better? And then I realized you can help and still be an asshole. You can, right? So this goes back to sometimes patients who don't want to do vision therapy at the beginning, be like, why wouldn't you? What's wrong with you? And then you realize it's their journey. So what I do hear from my team, whether they're employees or associate, is if you want to do a breakthrough session with me, if you want advice or whatever, yes, I'll do it. You have to ask because I don't want to force it onto you. If you don't ask, I won't know. Does that make sense? So that's number one. I do offer what I do with my clients and coaching to them as well. And then the more again, vision therapy and coaching to me, it was so intertwined. It was beautiful. I bring a lot of the tools what I have in coaching to my floor in vision therapy, and I bring some of the things I learned in vision therapy to my clients in coaching. But one of the themes that I really try to hold on to in my office is it's a Hawaiian term called lokahi, and it's harmony. And it's the idea that we're all in the same boat and we can either be paddling in different directions and not really moving, or we can work together and move forward. That theme, I built a whole bunch of lectures for my staff. So we'd close the office, we'd have team building days, but it would be me teaching about this. How do I create activities to kind of build harmony or lokahi with each other? The more meetings we had, it was interesting. I just did a couple of interviews to hire a new employee. I had a couple staff members who were on mat leave. And one of the questions that I got when, you do an interview process and do you have any questions for me? And one of them was, if we don't make our daily goals for sales, for glasses, for example, what consequences? What do you mean? And I was struggling with this. She's like, well, what is our punishment? Like what happens? And I thought, I don't really know what consequences. I guess it'd be more meetings, but in my office, I think meetings are actually good. Now, I didn't love meetings before. I hated meetings. Okay. But it was how I ran the meetings that I didn't like. It didn't seem like it was productive. So now when I look at meetings, I said, I guess you're going to have more, what the consequence would be more meetings with me. But I look at that as exciting because we're about to work through something that wasn't working. I mean, wouldn't it be more exciting as for any human being to go through a day and have more good solutions versus problems that show up? And I thought, yeah, that's my office. Like when we have meetings, it's feedback. In vision therapy, there is no failure. It's just feedback. So when we keep on looking at every time we hit an obstacle, it's not that we screwed it up. It's okay. What do we need to do now to navigate? Because I don't think that's what we're aiming for. So when you start building in the harmony into your practice, again, it's not that you just show up and hope your practice works. You don't have to, I guess. For me, I choose to live it. So then you embody who you want to be, and that starts to come out on the floor. It starts to come out in the exam room, and it just comes out with your team. And then your team gets to have that because it is a trickle down. Whether you accept it or not, if you're the owner, that energy goes downwards, right? It starts from you and it goes all the way down your whole office. So if you show up and you're not at your highest level, you're drained, you're tired, you're grumpy, your office is going to feel that. And your employees will be a little bit tired, grumpy, or whatever. I always find it's a reflection of you. So we have a lot of meetings. We have weekly meetings. We have it Monday mornings at 9. And whenever we have a holiday on Mondays and we start Tuesdays, I always like, oh, we missed the meeting. And because I like that little connection I get with my team. And then the team building. So a lot of it is, number one, we structure in what we want in our group. We had one where it was maybe 2 summers ago. It was the one I was really aiming. I wanted to flip a lot of the conversation. And Have you ever read the book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team?
No. I'm going to write that down.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And yet apply that not just to your business, but to relationships, to everything that you have, that whatever, whether it's in a marriage, even it's how you have discourse, how you talk. It's a pyramid of success. And the very bottom, the foundation of it is vulnerability. How do you have open dialogue with each other? And you need to be vulnerable. So I was aiming for that one for the team. How successful was that? At the end, I was bawling, like I was crying at this meeting. And I couldn't hold it together, but in a good way, because it was just being very open. And then everybody was crying. I had one team member who couldn't make it. And when she heard about it, she was like, I'm so glad I wasn't there. And part of me was like, I don't know if you really mean that. Like, it was a really cool meeting. And afterwards, it's not that we're pouring our hearts out every day to each other about our lives, but you trust that you're in a place that you can share your successes and your non-successes, and you're not going to be judged. It's not going to be taken personally. And that you can help each other grow. That was the notes I was trying to hit. And like our team it's exciting because I really do believe that they authentically care about each other. So then it was not only do you structure the meeting, you embody it. You bring it to the office and you live it. So how do you do it to support your team? Again, show up on how you want to show up. And it really does start, again, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning with yourself. You know, how you take care of yourself is a reflection. If your team looks at it and says, well, she says she wants to care about us, but she doesn't even look after herself, you know, there's something off with that.
No, you're so right. It really does go back to what you said in the beginning. If you do not take care of yourself in every aspect of your own life, then that is going to radiate to your job, your performance at school. You know, if you're a student, the way you communicate with your family members, the way you are with your friends, the patients in the room. Like, if you do not take care of yourself, it is going to, like Alexa said too, then it's going to show when you're interacting in other parts of your life. So I love all of that advice, Hansel. That was great. I felt like it was a really good therapy session for
Yes,
Alexa and I.
good.
And our listeners too.
Yeah, and our listeners. And I wanted to end off just asking two questions. You know, since this episode is sponsored by OSI Group, does OSI offer any sort of mental health coaching or resources as well to practice owners and their team? And then do you also offer like one-on-one coaching for students or like new grads? What for both of those things, what's available for ODs out there?
So she's the regional rep for me, and she's been amazing. I lean on her for a lot of practice management. Like I said, I know how to do VT. I put all my energy there in the sense of a practice. And yet primary care is one of those things that it's important to me more as a managerial. And this is the last couple of years, I've really been putting my awareness back on there. And I thought, again, the old me, you're supposed to, you're supposed to be good at it. I was afraid to ask questions about primary care because if I ask questions, what does that mean about I'm not good enough? That's embarrassing. That's scary, right? Put yourself out there. And then it was, well, I actually don't know if I'm doing a good job in primary care. I'm going to start asking questions. What do other people do? And once I did, Jazz was so good. OSI was so good. It was like, here, let's have meetings. Let's talk about it. So I was really asking more and more. The fact that there was no judging, it was, here's what we have. We have good resources. It's a lot of members. Here's what we can add to it. So that was really cool. In terms of mental health, I'll talk to Jazz and see a little bit more, but I know we've talked about it in passing. How does it look moving forward? Because we think we both realize that it's getting bigger. Do I coach students? I have paying clients and then pro bono. And I do try to give back in that sense. And so, yes, and yet I want to cap it a little bit. When I first started coaching, I jumped right out thinking I can handle five. Five clients would be easy. And then it was big. And that's actually one reason why I took that year to step away from primary care a little bit. I wanted to continue coaching my 5 clients and have the integrity to keep that up. But that also meant, where's the harmony in life? And if I'm going to practice what I preach, I recognized at one point, oh, shoot, I'm taking that from family. If coaching is part of career, the time I want to take it out from is probably going to be better suited coming from career. So I stepped back a little bit from primary care. I was still doing a lot of therapy with patients, with my team here and so on. But I saw less primary care for that period. Now I shrunk it back down. I have a wait list, and yet I'm happy with, I have 3 clients right now, and I'm very happy with that. And yet I think if I went back to 4, I'd be like, okay, I'm back in that little disharmony. And like I said, now I'm going to be seeing more primary care. And it's exciting because it's almost like you come back full circle. You rediscover, why did you start all this? To me, it's fun now. Like practicing full, you can always have fun, but now it's even deeper than fun, right? It's like it's me. And then once I'm done at 5 or 5:30 or sometimes maybe 5:45, I get to disconnect and just go and then do what I want to do back there without having to think, oh shoot, did I do this? Did I do that? Or what happened? It's the letting go and then being present for every moment, purposeful. What does this moment mean for me and for my intentions? So yeah, and it's funny where I was thinking about doing even a program where I might do like a group type of coaching. So instead of doing a one-on-one, maybe having like a webinar or at least like a some sort of connection where you're just a bunch of faces, squares on a computer screen, and you're just kind of sharing a little bit or talking through things. I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts with that, but I definitely think, it's funny when I thought about my ideal client, I was thinking more about people who've been practicing for 10 plus years. And then when we started talking and reading over what you guys had prepared for this, I thought, yeah, that's an area I really haven't put a lot of attention to. I do enjoy that. Like I just talked to another doctor, I think it was a week ago, who is newer to VT. And it was a lot of questions that I didn't even know how to navigate through until you learn through your mistakes, if you will. And then to him, it was like, I hope it was really good advice. To me, it was like, no, this took me years to kind of figure out, how do I do this?
Yeah. I think what you're offering applies to many ODs of any age, right? Because at the end of the day, what connects all of us is this profession. So we all have, to some level, the same struggles, the same level of imposter syndrome, the same anxieties. And so I think like new grads and young ODs and OD students definitely would benefit from coaching opportunities like this. I think in the schools, there should be more opportunities. Now, hopefully, the students themselves and the associations that they're in within the schools hopefully offer some mentorship opportunities and like coaching for mental health. At ICO, like we had a close friend, take his life because of the stresses from school. And so I think it's really, really going to be helpful if schools provide you or anyone else the opportunities to provide mental health coaching for students so that by the time they come out into their careers, they'll still maintain the general stresses of student loan debt and, finding a job, but hopefully they'll be better, trained and educated on how to disconnect, right, from their job after work and getting rid of that imposter syndrome sooner than, that all of us have gone through it.
I think that's like, it's important. And what you kind of said, like I was listening, like sent again to your podcast. You guys do such an awesome job. Your question to your speakers or your guests are so awesome. So first of all, thank you for inviting me here. And the second part was, when I first started coaching, I had another potential client reach out and said he wanted to start a VT clinic. And I said, well, hold on, is that coaching or is that consulting? And then I had to really draw out, is this even mentorship, what I do? And it wasn't. Mentorship is, here's what I did, you try it. Coaching isn't even that at all. So then I thought, there's so many different hats that are similar. Having a mentor is so important because you get to learn some strategies that may or may not have worked. In terms of coaching, it's more just what aligns with you, the client, and how do we then get you to get that on a high level so that it works every single time? What strategies can we create? And having both are so important. I don't think one is more important than the other. It was just the recognition of, why is it different? Because there was a point where I had to say to that potential client, I don't think I'm the one for you. Here's a couple names, even on Ontario, that will consult with you and they'll help you build your practice. And I remember him saying to me, but you have a successful practice. Like, I do. It's like, well, you can help me. I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to consult.
Yeah.
So I'm going to coach you.
That's another good tip. Draw the line.
Well, it goes back to boundaries. And it really was. For me, I could have, I know I can tell anybody how to grow practice. I don't think that's hard for me. And yet for me, I wanted the person. I wanted the person behind so that they can grow that way and build from within.
Thank you so much for your incredible insights and for coming on and chatting with us. If you can shout yourself out and let everyone know where they can find you, if they're interested in one-on-one coaching, I don't know if you're taking new clients, but maybe there's a wait list. Yeah, just if the email's the best or where they can connect with you.
Awesome. Yeah. And again, hopefully this is helpful for you guys too.
Oh, yeah. I love this.
Yeah. So email would be easiest. It's HHUANG, my first initial and my last name at eyecarefirst.com, EYECAREFIRST.com.
We'll link it in our description.
Yeah. Awesome. I have a coaching email too, but either way, I'm going to answer both anyway. So yeah, kind of works on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast.
You can find us on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For episode summaries and more resources, visit us at eyecarebusiness.ca.
Be sure to follow Next Gen OD on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for updates, news, and more insights into the world of optometry.
And this episode was brought to you by OSI Group, where connections, coaching, and collective buying power support your independent vision. Visit www.opto.com for more.
Don't forget to check out the show notes at eyecarebusiness.ca. Until next time, stay focused on your future.